You have been taught to believe that the you affirm is your own human, personal self, and this is the greatest misconception that has ever bound humanity. You have been repeating, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise, all the while pointing to a temporary, limited sense of identity that can know sickness, lack, and confusion. This is not the affirmation of truth. There is only one, I am, and it is not yours. It is the very voice and being of God. Your entire spiritual work, then, is not to build up a better human, but to surrender the human sense of I, until you disappear into the one, the only, the eternal I am that you are here to express. What you are about to hear will shatter the foundation of your present understanding and reveal the nature of the only I that can ever be affirmed. Listen, and you will discover what it means to let this divine identity live your life, for this is the portal to your entire spiritual freedom. For your entire life, you have been carefully constructing a self, an identity you carry with you like a well-worn suitcase. You pack it with your achievements, your failures, your name, your relationships, your profession, and all the opinions you have collected about who you are. When you face a challenge, you instinctively reach into this suitcase. You say, I am a capable person, I can handle this, or I am an anxious person, this is too much for me. You believe the I you are speaking of is you, the individual, the person born of flesh and blood with a specific history. This is the great foundational misconception that spiritual truth must shatter. This personal sense of I is not the reality. It is the veil that hides the reality from your sight. Consider for a moment the simple act of looking at a tree. You see its form, its leaves, its color. But what you are actually seeing is not the tree itself in its ultimate reality. You are seeing your own perception of the tree, an interpretation formed by your human senses and processed by your human brain. You live your entire life inside this personalized, interpreted reality. Now apply this to your own sense of self, the I you believe yourself to be, the one that gets offended, that strives for promotion, that worries about the future, that feels separate and alone, is not the fundamental I. It is merely your perception of a self, a collection of thoughts, memories, and sensations that you have mistakenly claimed as your absolute identity. This is the profound error, worshiping the reflection in the mirror as if it were the source of the light. This misconception is the root of all your suffering. When you affirm from this level, I am healthy, you are doing so from a consciousness that is equally capable of knowing and fearing sickness. You are trying to use a thought to wallpaper over a deep-seated belief in the opposite. The very effort to affirm health from a personal standpoint reinforces the power of the personal self, which is the very realm where illness appears to have validity. It is a battle fought on the wrong battlefield. You are attempting to heal a character in a movie by having the character shout affirmations at the screen, all the while ignoring the projector, the source of the light, and the image itself. Your daily life is a constant testimony to the tyranny of this personal I, when a criticism lands, who flinches. It is this personal self defending its fragile existence. When a desire arises, who scrambles to fulfill it. This same self, seeking to bolster its sense of completeness through external things. When you feel lack, who feels it. It is the I that believes it is a separate entity, cut off from the infinite resources of the universe. Every conflict you have ever had, every moment of anxiety, every pang of loneliness is experienced by this phantom, I, that you have been conditioned to protect and serve. The spiritual path, therefore, cannot begin with this personal I, an attempt to improve it, to make it more spiritual, more positive, or more powerful. That is merely polishing the chains. The work is far more radical. It is the unflinching, patient, and persistent letting go of this false sense of ownership. It is to see that every thought that begins with me, my problem, my healing, my spiritual progress, is a subtle reinforcement of the central misconception. You are not here to become a better person. You are here to discover that you are not the person you thought you were. The I that you have worn like a costume is not your true identity. And the moment you stop clutching it so tightly, a new and ancient presence can begin to make itself known. This is not a loss, but the greatest discovery imaginable, for it is the discovery of who you have always been prior to the accumulation of a name and a story. This brings us to the very heart of the mystery, the truth that must now dawn with the force of a revelation. If the personal, I, you have been affirming is not the ultimate reality, then what is? We arrive at the absolute impersonality of the true I am. This is not a philosophical concept to be debated. It is a living reality to be experienced. The I am is not your possession. It does not belong to you. You belong to it. It is the very substance of being, the one life that animates all form, the single consciousness in which all appearances, including the appearance of a separate you, arise and subside. It is the great I am that spoke to Moses from the burning bush, the same I am that was the very nature of the Christ. It is the only presence and the only power. To affirm this I am is not to strengthen yourself. It is to disappear into the ocean of divine being. Consider the sun. It shines indiscriminately upon the entire landscape. It does not decide to shine on one flower and withhold its light from another. It does not possess a personal relationship with any particular object it illuminates. Its nature is simply to shine, and in that shining, all things are revealed and receive life. The true I am is like that sun. It is the impersonal, radiant consciousness that illuminates your mind, that gives you the capacity to be aware, to think, to feel. You did not create this awareness. You awoke to it. It was here before the formation of your personal identity, and it will be here after the thought of that identity has vanished. Your sense of I am is the faint, individualized echo of that universal, impersonal radiance. This is why all attempts to personalize spiritual power ultimately fail and lead to frustration. When you pray, God, give me this specific thing for my life, you are addressing the infinite as if it were a personal benefactor who shares your limited perspective and your attachment to specific outcomes. You are asking the sun to shine only on your garden. But the divine activity is impersonal law. It operates with the precision of a principle, like the principle of mathematics. 2 plus 2 equals 4 for everyone, without favor or prejudice. The principle of harmony is the same. When you align with it, harmony appears in your experience not as a personal reward, but as the natural, inevitable consequence of that alignment. Your own body is a perfect example of this impersonal activity. The intelligence that beats your heart, that digests your food, that heals a cut on your finger, is that your personal intelligence. Did you, as a personal I, decide to orchestrate the complex symphony of metabolic processes happening within you at this very moment? Of course not. A wisdom far beyond your personal mind is governing these functions. This is the I am at work as life itself. It is the same intelligence that guides the bird in its migration and the star in its course. It is one life, one consciousness, functioning impersonally through all forms. To grasp this is to be liberated from the exhausting burden of personal responsibility for outcomes. You are not the one who heals, who prospers, who achieves peace. You are the avenue through which the one I am expresses itself as healing, as abundance, as peace. Your entire spiritual work shifts from one of acquisition to one of relinquishment. It is not about filling the personal self with more light, but about removing the obstacles that the personal self has placed in the way of the light that already is. You stop trying to direct the river and instead learn to let it flow through you. You begin to see that every talent you have, every moment of genuine insight, every impulse of pure love does not originate from the limited personal psyche, but flows from this infinite, impersonal source. Your only task is to get your sense of I out of the way, to cease your constant mental commentary and manipulation, and to consent to being the transparent medium for a presence and a power that is, in its very nature, gloriously and eternally impersonal. And so we come to the great turning point, the practical application that separates mere theory from living truth. If the true I am is an impersonal divine power, and the personal I is the misconception that obscures it, then the spiritual path is not one of accumulation, but of evaporation. It is the active, conscious, and continuous surrender of the human ego. This is not a passive resignation to life's circumstances. It is the most dynamic activity you will ever undertake. It is the deliberate and voluntary yielding of your sense of being the central actor, the manager, the one in control, so that the one divine actor may take the stage. This surrender is not a loss of will, but the alignment of your personal will with the infinite will until they are indistinguishable. You practice this not in some remote monastery, but in the fiery crucible of your daily existence. Consider a moment of intense conflict. The old, untrained reaction is for the personal I to rise up in defense, to justify itself, to prove its point, to win the argument. It gathers evidence of the other's wrongdoing and its own righteousness. This is the ego fortifying its walls. The practice of surrender begins the moment you catch this mechanism in action and you make a different choice. You consciously relax the mental grip on your position. You do not necessarily agree with the other person outwardly, but inwardly, you release the burning need to be right, to be vindicated, to protect the image of yourself that has been threatened. This inner letting go is an act of spiritual surgery. It is the surrender of the human ego's claim to sovereignty in that situation. You are not surrendering to the other person. You are surrendering your personal sense of self to the divine presence that is equally the being of both of you. Or take the experience of worry about the future. Worry is the ego's frantic attempt to control a timeline that has not yet unfolded. It is the personal I proclaiming, "It is up to me to figure this out, to prevent disaster, to secure a specific outcome." The practice here is to recognize this activity as the stirring of the false self. Surrender looks like consciously stopping the frantic mental planning and instead becoming still. It is a silent, inner statement. I, as a separate entity, do not know the way. I release this burden. I yield this anxiety. I am open and receptive to the direction of a wisdom that is not my own. You are not surrendering to chaos. You are surrendering the limited, fearful mind to the infinite intelligence of the I Am. You are trading the agony of personal responsibility for the peace of divine governance. Even your desires must become part of this sacred offering. The personal self is a bundle of desires, constantly seeking fulfillment in objects, relationships, and achievements to confirm its existence and value. The surrender of the ego involves placing these very desires on the altar. It is the profound inner shift from, "I must have this to be happy," to, "Thy will be done." This does not mean you become inert and desireless. It means you release your clenched, fist attachment to the specific form your fulfillment must take. You acknowledge that the personal I is a poor judge of what will bring lasting peace. You offer up the desire itself, trusting that the I Am, which is the source of all fulfillment, will manifest what is for the highest good in a way your limited mind could never conceive. This is how you stop being a beggar pleading for crumbs and start becoming a conscious vessel through which divine abundance flows. This ongoing surrender is the true spiritual practice. It is a moment-by-moment mindfulness, a vigilant watching of the thoughts and emotions that would reinforce the separate self. Every time you feel irritation, see it as the ego's reaction and let it go. Every time you feel pride, see it as the ego's claim and release it. Every time you feel fear, recognize it as the ego's illusion of separation and surrender it back to the one mind. This is not a battle you fight with willpower. It is a dissolution you allow through awareness. You are not killing the ego. You are seeing through its insubstantial nature until it loses its power to hypnotize you. With every surrendered thought, every released anxiety, every yielded desire, you are thinning the veil. You are ceasing to stand as a separate entity facing God, and you are beginning the glorious, humble, and thrilling descent into the truth that there is only God, and that your true self is, and always has been, that one I am. Now we approach the ultimate implication of this surrender, the truth that will transform your entire understanding of existence. As the claimer of the personal, I grows quiet through this conscious relinquishment, a new and astounding activity is revealed. It becomes apparent that God is the sole actor. The divine I am is not a passive presence you occasionally visit in meditation. It is the only true animating force, the only doer, the only power that performs every action, thinks every thought, and lives every life. Your entire sense of a separate individual performing deeds is the final and most persistent illusion. The wave does not make itself rise and fall. It is the movement of the ocean itself. In the same way, you do not live your life. The one divine life is living itself as you. Observe your own hand as you reach for a cup. The personal mind claims, I am moving my hand, but trace that action to its source. A thought or an impulse arose, seemingly from within you, and the hand moved. Where did that initial impulse come from? Did you, as a conscious ego, manufacture it? Or did it simply appear in the field of awareness, after which the body, governed by intelligence you did not create, obeyed? The entire process, the desire, the neurological command, the muscular contraction, is a single, seamless activity of the one life. You are the witness of this activity, and in your ignorance, you have claimed ownership of it. To realize that God is the sole actor is to see that every movement, every breath, every heartbeat is this divine activity in expression. You are not the thinker of your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thinking happens. The I am is the thinker. This understanding dismantles the very foundation of pride and guilt, the twin pillars of the ego. If you achieve a great success, the old self rushes in to claim the credit, building a monument to its own ability. But if God is the sole actor, then the intelligence that conceived the idea, the energy that carried it out, and the strength that persevered were all borrowed, all expressions of the one life flowing through you. There is no one here to take credit. Conversely, when you perceive a failure or a mistake, the personal self collapses under the weight of guilt and self-condemnation. But if God is the sole actor, then even this experience is part of a larger, perfect unfoldment that the limited personal mind cannot comprehend. You are released from the torment of being the one who succeeded or the one who failed. You are simply the place where the infinite is happening. This is not a call to inertia. It is an invitation to the most profound and effective activity imaginable. Your role shifts from being the frantic door to being a conscious, willing instrument. It is the difference between a sailor trying to blow into the sails with his own breath, and that same sailor learning to set the sails to catch the prevailing wind. The wind is the power, the sailor is the intelligence that aligns with it. Your work is to set your sails, your thoughts, your attitudes, your openness, to catch the wind of the Spirit. You take action, but you do so with the inner knowing that the impulse to act and the power to complete the action are not your own. You work without the anxiety of personal responsibility for the outcome, for you know the results are in the hands of a wisdom far greater than your own. Watch how this transforms your most ordinary tasks. When you wash a dish, you are not a person performing a chore. You are the consciousness through which the divine principle expresses as order and cleanliness. When you speak to a colleague, you are not a separate entity navigating a social interaction. You are the openness through which the one mind may express wisdom, compassion, or clarity. The pressure to perform, to impress, to control vanishes because there is no separate performer left. There is only the one I am, functioning as all form and all activity. You begin to live in a state of wonder, watching your own life unfold as a divine performance, where every encounter is a sacrament and every action is a form of prayer. The sense of struggle dissipates, replaced by a serene and powerful trust that the same intelligence that designed the galaxy is perfectly capable of orchestrating the details of your daily life. You are not here to make life happen. You are here to let life happen through you, as you, knowing that the you through which it flows is, in its absolute reality, one with the source. This brings us to the very texture of this new existence, the practical reality of what it means to walk through this world once the great transition has begun. It is the difference between living for a divine identity and living from it. To live for the divine is to see it as a future goal, a state to be attained, a prize to be won after sufficient effort and purification. This is the perspective of the personal I, which is always seeking, always reaching for something it believes it lacks. But to live from the divine identity is to operate from the unshakable conviction that it is your present and only reality. You are not trying to become the I am. You are recognizing that you, in your true being, are that I am, and you are allowing all action, thought, and experience to flow from that foundational truth. Imagine a king's son who was separated at birth and raised as a peasant. He lives his entire life with a peasant's mindset. He worries about his crops. He feels inferior to the nobles in the castle. He strives for a slightly larger hut. This is living for a kingship he does not know is his. Now imagine the moment the truth is revealed to him. He is the rightful heir. His consciousness is instantly transformed. He does not need to strive to become the king. He is the king. He may still walk the same lands, but he now walks them with the bearing, authority, and inner knowing of his royal identity. He no longer lives for the hope of kingship. He now conducts his life from the established fact of his kingship. Your situation is precisely this: the revelation of your true identity as the I am is the royal proclamation of your own being. From that moment, your entire life becomes an expression of that sovereignty, not a struggle to achieve it. This changes everything about your moment-to-moment experience. Consider a challenge you are facing, perhaps a financial difficulty or a health concern. The old way, living for God, would involve frantic prayers, affirmations, and spiritual practices aimed at persuading a separate God to fix the problem. It is the peasant begging the king for mercy. But living from God is an entirely different orientation. It is the quiet, inner stillness where you acknowledge, the I am that I am is the substance of all supply. The I am that I am is the very activity of perfect health. You do not say this to change a situation. You declare it as the fundamental truth of your being, regardless of the appearance. You are not asking for abundance. You are standing as the conscious embodiment of the source of abundance itself, and you let your actions be guided from that conviction. The energy shifts from pleading to proclaiming, from seeking to being. Your relationships are transformed under this light. When you live for a spiritual ideal, you try to be loving, patient, and kind. You exert personal will to mimic these qualities, often failing and judging yourself for it. But when you live from the I am, you understand that God is the only presence, the only being, and therefore the individual before you is, in their true nature, that same divine presence. You are not a separate person trying to love another separate person. You are the one consciousness recognizing itself in another form. Love, patience, and kindness are not qualities you manufacture. They are the natural fragrance, the spontaneous overflow of the one life living itself as you. The pressure to be a good person vanishes, replaced by the effortless expression of your true nature when the obstructive personal self is out of the way. Even your sense of purpose is reborn. The personal self lives for achievements and milestones, the promotion, the purchased home, the completed project. These are its trophies. But living from the I am, your purpose is simply to be the transparent medium for the divine to express itself uniquely as you. You are not here to build a personal empire of success. You are here to be the specific form through which the formless I am experiences its own glory. Your work becomes a form of worship, not because of what you are doing, but because of the consciousness from which you are doing it. Whether you are composing a symphony or washing a floor, the activity is sacred because it is the one life living itself as that activity. You move through your days not as a seeker on a long journey, but as the very destination itself, now fully awake and alive, expressing the infinite in the finite, the eternal in the temporal, the one in the many. And so we arrive at the culmination, the very reason for this entire journey of understanding. This conscious abiding in the I am, this living from the divine identity rather than for it, is not merely a pleasant state of mind or a philosophical conclusion. It is the portal to your entire spiritual freedom. This freedom is not freedom from the circumstances of your human experience, but freedom within them. It is the realization that the core of your being, the I am that you are, is utterly untouched by the shifting tides of appearance, the roller coaster of emotion, or the inevitable changes of the body. This is the final liberation from the tyranny of the outer world, for you discover an inner citadel of peace that can never be assailed. Consider the most common sources of human bondage fear: lack, sickness, and conflict. From the perspective of the personal, I, these are absolute realities to be fought, managed, or endured. They are solid walls of a prison. But from the vantage point of the I am, they are seen for what they are: temporary conditions appearing within the infinite, unchanging field of consciousness. They are weather patterns in the sky. The sky itself remains vast, clear, and unaffected. When you know yourself to be the sky and not the storm, you are free, even in the midst of the storm's fury. A financial loss may occur, but the I am, the substance of all supply, remains your identity, untouched and ever expressive. A diagnosis may be given, but the I am, the one life that is eternal wholeness, remains the truth of your being. This knowing does not magically erase the appearance, though it often transforms it. But it completely severs its power to define you, to frighten you, or to convince you of your separation from good. This freedom expresses itself as a radical and innate sense of safety. The personal self is perpetually insecure because it is a temporary, fragile construct, forever at the mercy of external events. Its survival seems constantly threatened. But when you abide as the I am, you are abiding as that which was never born and can never die. What threat can a passing opinion, a fluctuating bank balance, or even the aging of the body pose to the eternal? This is not a theoretical safety. It is a palpable, lived experience. You walk through the world with a quiet confidence that has nothing to do with personal prowess or accumulated resources. It is the unshakable confidence of being the rock itself, rather than a leaf tossed about on its surface. Challenges still arise, but they are met with a resilience that is not your own, a wisdom that does not originate in your personal mind, and a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away. This is the freedom to experience life fully without being enslaved by it. The personal self either clings to pleasure in desperation or recoils from pain and fear. It is a slave to its own reactions. But from the portal of the I am, you can enjoy the pleasures of human existence, the beauty of a sunset, the warmth of a relationship, the satisfaction of a task well done, without the frantic need for them to last forever or define your worth. You can experience pain, loss, or disappointment without being shattered by them, because you know these are waves on the surface of an ocean that you are. You are free to feel deeply without being identified with the feeling. You are the awareness in which joy and sorrow dance, and you are vast enough to contain both without losing your essential nature. This, then, is the ultimate promise. The constant affirmation of the true I am is the key that unlocks this portal. It is not a mantra to be chanted, but a truth to be realized until it becomes the very air you breathe. Every moment you remember, I am He, not as a person claiming equality with God, but as a wave realizing it is the ocean. You step more fully into this freedom. Your home is no longer a structure of wood and stone, but this indestructible, divine identity. Your security is not in a job or a relationship, but in the infinite being that you are. Your purpose is not to find happiness, but to be the consciousness from which all joy springs. This is the end of seeking, for you have found yourself. This is the end of striving, for you are resting in your own being. This is the peace that passes all human understanding, not as a transient emotion, but as the permanent, natural state of the one who has walked through the portal and discovered they were already home.